My name is Gornto, and I grew up in Oklahoma City. I was the third of 3 girls. I was the little rugrat who was always getting in trouble, which has actually turned out well for me. I was kind of a tomboy, and I have 2 little boys now, and so we get to play in the mud and have fun, and they get in a lot of trouble. And I'm married to a wonderful man named Scott Gornto, who is a marriage and family therapist and an author of a book called The Stories We Tell Ourselves, so that's been fun. And I started a company called HeartStories, just to really help women with issues of worth, help them to really embrace their true worth and live from that place. What gave me the idea to start HeartStories was really a moment that I had when I first learned about human trafficking, and there's really kind of a very loose connection to what I'm doing now and human trafficking, but there was this moment in my spirit when I knew that I needed to do something more with my life and that my life was going to change. And so I hired a coach. Her name was Michelle James, and she took me through a very creative process of just kind of unearthing and figuring out what's in me to do, and what that passion turned out to be was helping women and really, more than anything, helping them with believing in their true worth, who they are in their heart, and helping them to replace the negative stories in their minds with the true stories of their hearts. And as a result of that, make choices in their life to live a different way and do more with their lives. We really teach women, or I try to blog 5 days a week, and the theme changes. It's not a strategic theme necessarily, but it is tangible. It's things like how to notice or ways to think about and notice your neighbors and care for them, and how to just recognize, in a lot of ways, recognize the need for friendship. That's one of the biggest things that HeartStories has done, and it was quite by accident. When I set out to create it, it wasn't to help friends get closer. It was that I figured out by having all these conversations with women that when we listen to those negative stories most often, it's when we're alone, when we're looking at Facebook or social media, but it's not when we're with our very closest girlfriends. And so that's one of the things we've focused on a lot, is tangible ways to replace that negative noise through relationship and community with women who love you exactly as you are. I am inspired by so many people, and throughout my life there have been so many. My dad, Zig Ziglar, big list of inspirational people, but mostly it's people who are genuine and generous. Those are like the 2 biggest things that are inspirational to me. And so right now, the voice that I listen to, the positive voice that's in my head the most, is Seth Godin. I cannot get enough of him. I have listened to all his books on audio. I've bought all the books. I read his blog every day, and I find myself quoting him all the time. People who work with me are like, "Come on, you're talking about Seth Godin again." But I can't help it. He's a brilliant marketer, entrepreneur, business person, but he has the most generous, beautiful heart to help people do a lot of what I want to help women do, which is just to live and do what they're supposed to do in the world. If I could talk to a younger version of me, I would for sure tell her, there's so many things I would tell her, but the one big thing for where I am right now, the one big thing that I would have wanted me to tell me is don't try to be perfect. Like I wanted everything to be polished and pretty before I presented anything to the world. This just kind of, I don't know if the way I grew up or if it's just the way I am, but the biggest learning that I've had, at least over the last 2.5 years, is that you've got to just put yourself out there right where you are in all the mess, and like do as good as you can and make it, the best that you know how to make it in that moment, and know in advance that it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be right, but the value of learning when you put it out there. I mean, it's the business concept of the MVP and most viable product, like just getting the minimum out there, minimum viable product, getting the minimum thing out there and presenting it to the world to get feedback. But from a personal perspective, I think personally, putting my work, my writing, my ideas out into the world, and then allowing women to interact with them, it changes me in a way that then I can create better art or do better work. So it works from a business perspective and from a personal perspective to just not wait till it's perfect and just put it out there. For sure, the top 3 questions, I mean, I have no doubt. In my mind, when I go speak to women, I've done career days at schools, The 3 questions that I have people write the answers to are write down, and I do it in 3s actually, write down 3 things that you love. What are 3 things that you love, whether it's fashion, shopping, food, pets, whatever it is, write down 3 things that you love. So I have them write those down. And then write down 3 things that break your heart. What are 3 things that make you cry? You can't even look, it hurts your stomach, it makes you so upset. What are 3 things that break your heart? And then the final thing is write down 3 things that make you steaming mad, like what really pisses you off. And when you finish, you have 9 things that you really care about, that you're passionate about in one way or another. And I encourage women to go pick one of those things and do something about it. Pick all 9 of them if you can, but do something about something that you're passionate about. So I think balance is, like you said, a loaded question for sure, but I don't think balance is achievable, and I think it's not a worthy goal. I really believe it's more about priorities and prioritizing what's most important to you, and that gets a lot more time and energy and importance than the next thing on your, if you made it like a triangle. So for me, prioritizing my life has been the most helpful thing in helping keep me centered. But, you know, having my family and my faith and all of those things that are like the core of who I am, and then building on top of that, then my business that I'm so passionate about and helping women, and then friendships and all of the things in an order, it helps me for sure to stay centered and to know where I'm going. And the other part of that is I think that triangle, whether it probably always stays that sort of a shape with those sort of weights, but it certainly changes in seasons. I think that in some seasons, what's on the bottom might have to shift to that second section and have something else be more important just for 2 weeks or just for this season. But being aware of that there are different priorities, and as long as my priorities are matching where I'm spending my time, then I feel at least at peace and centered, even though I don't necessarily feel balanced ever. Seriously, one of the most traumatic things I've been through is the last 2.5 years of trying to get HeartStories off the ground and spending all of my retirement. I liquidated my retirement to start spending it and looking at myself in the mirror like, what did you do? Like that shame that I'm trying to help other women with, I totally put it on myself because I wasn't where I thought I was going to be or where other people thought I should be. And who even knows where that is? So that experience of like having to really dig deep and figure out what it is that's most important and not shun other people's beliefs about me or even what I think other people believe about me, but to go through like the low, hard places and keep going and keep believing in the dream, even though it's sometimes from the outside things have looked like they weren't going to make it or there was no reason to go on. I always knew there was, and that has been certainly the hardest part with my marriage and my family and everything, to go through the uncertainty and not knowing what was going to happen next, but keep putting one foot in front of the other. And so that's the way that I've been able to turn it around, is just by continuing to get up every morning and do it. The continual motivation can only come from internal, like knowing that I'm doing what I want to do in the world. And I only know that when I get to hear the stories of women whose lives have been changed in some way. It doesn't have to be drastic. Sometimes it is. It's really exciting, as I'm sure you've heard, stories of people whose lives have changed drastically because they heard one thing you said that wasn't even necessarily directed towards them, or an event we put on. That I've heard so many stories of women who made one little change or one big change as a result of something they learned from someone who spoke, or a story we shared on the blog that's encouraged them to do something they're passionate about. And when I get that feedback and I know that what I have in my mind, this dream that I have, is actually working, even if no one else ever sees it, that keeps me going. I want my legacy to be love. It's the message that I share from HeartStories is creating more love in the world. And I want that to not just be the message that I shared, but I want it to be what I lived. I want my kids and my family and people that I worked with to look back and say, she loved well. That's a great question. Our target audience is women who are searching for more meaning and purpose in their lives. I don't think our target audience is a demographic of age or certain socioeconomic standing. It's more about what women are looking for, because some women are happy to be climbing the corporate ladder and making more money and balancing and prioritizing their family in that and having all of those things. And then there is a certain subset of the population of women who are desperately longing to have more purpose and meaning, whether that's as a stay-at-home mom or in corporate America or in philanthropy, but like they're women who are looking for more meaning and purpose. I think there's so many seasons, but the power of women to me today, when I hear that phrase, it reminds me of an article that I read, a little blog that I read last week about some of the things, the terrible things that have gone on in the world and are going on with women, and the way they're just being mistreated and marginalized and tortured in some places. And the woman, Ann Voskamp, is who wrote the article I read, and there was one phrase that she repeated that she said, "We belong to each other." And I just, like, it gripped my heart that, like, if I'm treating you like we belong to each other, then I am empowering you and believing in you and doing everything I can to support you. And if I'm treating a woman overseas who's being marginalized like we belong to each other, I don't look away when the news story comes that's too hard. So that's what the power of women is to me today, is really believing that we belong to each other and we're here to help each other. By being more authentic with each other and trying to drop there's so much to it, but there's so much judgment from the outside when we see another woman and make judgments about who she is and what she believes and how she's going to treat us and what she thinks about us and all of those things, and try to drop that within ourselves so that when we see other women, we look into their eyes and see them for who they are and listen and be open to learn from them. And then from the inside out as well, that we are presenting ourselves in an open, generous way where we're open to helping and listening and serving each other. I think that's the best way we can support each other, is being more authentic and real. So what we're doing next, right now we're building an online store for selling. It's so much more than a store. We're selling the products and telling the stories of female social entrepreneurs. So women who have done what we encourage women to do, figured out something they're passionate about, and then committed their lives to making that kind of change in the world. And I'm focused on telling their stories, because what we do with HeartStories is connecting women with the stories of their hearts. So we want to hear the stories and share the stories of the women who started these companies. Also, of course, the causes that they support and that they're passionate about, but really why they did it and what's kept them going and what's been hard and what they regret. And some of the things that we've talked about today, want to tell the stories specifically about these female social entrepreneurs and sell their products in the store all in one place, so women who want to support other women can go to the shop and know that they're buying from a woman who's living their heart story and making a great change in the world as a result. What I haven't done that I want to do next is, it really is going to be the next thing after this shop by HeartStories that we're creating, is to create a community for these female social entrepreneurs, a community that makes them feel not so alone, because living your heart story, doing something in the world that gives back, business that takes longer, that doesn't make as much money, it's really hard and it's really lonely. And so the more I talk to them, as we're just talking about how to get their products in the store and how to tell their stories, I am gripped by this loneliness that there is and that there should not be, because there are so many of them out there doing this beautiful work. They should know each other, they should hold each other's hands and pull each other along and encourage each other to keep going. So that's the thing I'm most excited about doing that I'm just not able to do right now.